Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Sound Bytes, where today I am joined by a dear friend of mine, Ben Meneses Sosa. Have I said that right?
Sosa, yeah.
Sosa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you can mention or pronounce my surname properly, that's when you reach the pinnacle of friendship. Meneses Sosa.
I can't believe I stuffed up the Sosa part because that's the easy part. Yeah, and I told you this before. My wife's name is Meneses with a Z, right? It's Portuguese. She's from Goa in India, and they were colonized by the Portuguese. But so in my head, I'm like, don't fuck it up. But then, but it's slightly different, right?
Sosa.
Yeah,
because it's Spanish.
Yeah, yes, it's Spanish. Yeah. Makes sense. So Ben just finished up at Lendi, where you were VP of Engineering. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, VP of Engineering, and you've worn that sort of hat a few times throughout your career. And what I'm pretty excited about here having you on the show today is you've got to run through a sort of summary of a pretty successful talk you gave recently about how to lead leaders. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it is about that, but it's more about how to give like a guideline for leaders to manage their teams in their everyday. This came from a talk or a tutorial that I gave with Folklore BC last year, but it was actually extracted from a thing we did at my previous role, in which suddenly we had people that would become acting team leaders, whether because the team leader would leave or they would just go on holidays, and then we needed an acting team leader to take the responsibilities of the team leadership. So we distilled what the person needed to do, and this is almost like the guidelines that I would give the person that would assume that role for a limited period of time. So this is what this is basically.
Yep. So if someone were to be stepping up into a team lead role for a short period of time that had some level of competency but hadn't done it before, if they followed this framework, they'd be able to do the job.
Yeah, I think so. And I think this doesn't consider people management, by the way. This is more on the operational side of the team.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people lead in many different ways. A lot of companies are so different, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for seasoned or experienced team leaders, this might also give them a point of view that could be useful for them too. And there's a part at the end where I'm talking about moving more to the strategy part of leading a team that definitely would help team leaders that are caught just doing the everyday thing.
All right.
So and this is something that for me, when I was a team leader, I don't think I ever thought about it.
Yeah.
This only came after I moved out of that role. But I think when I was team leader, I was caught in the daily grind.
Sure.
So this also, when we discuss this at the very end of this framework that we talk about, I should be able to explain how do you move now that you know how to do the daily parts, like how do you move more to the strategic bits.
Okay.
That only in many cases only a team leader can do. That's their role.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's get it on.
Yeah.
Let's get it. So what's it called?
So I don't know, we're trying to figure it out. So in this case, I had it's not like a clay with the letters, because there was a thing that's delivery, decision, delegation. And more or less, I didn't want to think too much of it, because sometimes marketing gets the best of you, and because you want to follow a gimmick, you end up sacrificing the content. So for me, I was like, no, I'm not going to sacrifice the content for just trying to put like a catchy name. So I'm not really, maybe we'll figure it out at the end how to call this, but it doesn't have a name right now.
No name leadership. Let's go.
So one of the things, and the very first thing that I tell people when they move to these positions of leadership, whether it's temporary or permanently, is that the first your first directive as a leader is you need to deliver value You need to deliver value to your customers or your users. And people that know me know that I'm very person-oriented. I am as person-oriented as they come. But if we don't, if the team leader, they don't focus on delivering value for the business, then the team might not be there the next day. So it's an imperative that the team leader need to focus on this, because also there's a lot of things about the purpose of the people working on the team and growth and a lot of things that come next to it aside from economics. So the first thing is you need to deliver value for the teams, you need to deliver value for the users and the business, and you need to do it in a sustainable way. Sustainable carries a lot of things in here. Sustainable means that if you have milestones or deadlines or commitments, when you deliver those, your quality is fine. You're not drowning in bugs because you skipped all the quality steps, or you have a massive amount of tech debt, and then the next time you want to change something, it's impossible, and you're like completely trying to walk into like a muddy bit, and it's very hard. Or your team hates each other. Everyone hates each other. It's like competing with each other and not collaborating and in silos. So that is not, you want also, aside from delivering the value, you want to do it for the long run, right? Because every time you had to manage or hire someone else, then that slows you down, that costs money and all that. So you want to do this in a way that it just keeps going and gets momentum, gets people growing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the very first thing. The first part that I would say about the delivery bit is that when I said delivering value, like how do you know what value is? Yeah, right? So you go and normally there's people in your team, hopefully, that know the business objectives and how to translate them to team's objectives, and this person might be a product manager, for example. In many tech companies, many tech teams, you have this role, a product manager. So a product manager would be the person helping the team understand or translate those business objectives into team objectives or tech objectives.
For delivery.
Yeah. For delivery, yes. Perfect. So in this case, the team leader needs to become the best friend of the product manager. Mm-hmm. I used to have a boss that I love, but he used to say, product and engineering, they're always in tension. Yeah. And I learned that there shouldn't be tension. There should be a partnership, and everyone should share the same objectives, because when you have different objectives, you're going to compete. So you need to make them, like product and engineering should go in the same direction, should have the same objectives.
Makes complete sense. Otherwise, there'd be priorities to different levels.
Yeah, it's very common. Yeah, it's very, very common when there are silos, and then I think that's a sign or a signal of an team that is not integrated well, or just even working a little bit on waterfall. When people just work on their part and then just pass it to the next. Yeah. So team. No, it's fine. Yeah. No, please. So team leaders need to partner with product managers, understand the business objectives, understand, maybe help them with the team's objectives in terms of feasibility, all that. And once the team has its objectives, like for the year, for the quarter, for the sprint, the team leader needs to cascade those and also get their team, their engineers, to be believers and to understand what the team is trying to do in the high level, but also like in the lower level. So in that case, that also is beneficial, because then the team leader doesn't need to be reminding people or behind people, because the team themselves would regulate or will, call each other out whenever that team is going into a different direction. Mm-hmm. So once this happens, you're like, as a team, deliver value. I align my people. Oh, great. So now deliver. Yep. So that should work, right? So unfortunately, because, life, nothing works as we want it to be. So there's going to be a lot of shifts and changes and things like that. And the team leader in this case First of all, they need to manage expectations with stakeholders. At the smallest change, things should be notified. Sometimes the product manager does this, but the team leader, if they need to, they should be proactively updating, so there's no surprises. Surprises in this context suck. Like, no one likes them. I don't know. Like, I actually have other people, like in other contexts, that people don't like surprises. In these contexts are the worst thing. So you should be able to communicate changes very quickly. So, because that also gives you a buffer to how to act and things like that. And the other thing is, you need to apply. So team leaders, I would expect that many of them had a background of engineers, developers. They need to use their transferable skills of debugging to debug their team whenever something is not happening. So if people see their team not delivering, they need to understand why. Do they have a bottleneck? Do they have issues with dependencies? One thing that is very common is when people have unplanned work. What does this unplanned work happen? Is the product manager and the team leader not being across what's being coming into the team, and then, like sometimes, and I'm going to inject context here, sometimes the team gets support tickets or other kind of requests. If the team is not very clear on the objectives, but also on a processing, which is if a support ticket comes in, it needs to come from the front door. The product manager should understand it and should see it. And the product manager should be the one saying, let's just do this, or let's just put this a little bit on the side so we can focus on on our objective. If the engineers are approached directly, sometimes they don't know if this might be very urgent, so they start working on something else, and then the team starts going a little bit astray. They started shifting towards somewhere else. So this is the kind of thing that a team leader needs to be very aware and debug their team whenever things don't happen. So that is the first part about delivery. So the next bit that it's also very common daily thing that is going to happen, it's a lot of decision making, the second D. So what happened with decision making? Well, this is something that as leaders, everyone does it, leaders and non-leaders, right? There's a lot of literature on this, so I'm not going to give you all the basics, because people should, this is not a thing that should make you an expert. This is just giving you leads to go and search on your own. But there are a couple of things that I have observed that people do, especially newer team leaders. One is about balanced decision making. So I have seen people moving either whenever there's a decision that needs to be made, they're very keen and very eager to help their team, right? And then they start solving everything. They're everywhere. They're putting, they're gonna fix it, and so that is not a good idea, because remember the sustainable part of it is one, if you do that, you're gonna become a decision bottleneck. Two, your people are not gonna grow their decision making skills. Three, your team might even resent you because you're just giving them things to do rather than asking them to help solve problems.
Sure,
right. So that is one part. The other side that I've seen is people that are overtly collaborative. That any step they need to ask their team, what do we do? And there are things that might be trivial or very easily reversible that might not matter. So the team is don't ask me, just this is your job.
Yeah, sure.
So I think for people, they need to observe themselves about what side of the spectrum do they lean. One thing that is very important to remember and consider is the team leader is still accountable for the outputs of the team, the outcomes of the team, I mean. So people get confused about getting input from the team or helping the team decide, because in many cases people think, well, the team is deciding, so what's my role? The team leader is still accountable, and it still needs to face stakeholders with whatever the decision is, right? So the team leader needs to always be comfortable with the decision. They need to be able to justify it. They need to be able to present it. They need to be able to, make them theirs.
Yeah.
Because if I'm dealing with a team leader and there is something that was decided, I, as a manager of this team leader, I don't accept that. Well, the team decided, right? I was outnumbered. I couldn't do anything. Yeah, no, they need to own.
You become it's like that shit funnel. It's like you're passing that delegate responsibility on to the team.
Yeah. So
which is the complete opposite of what a good manager.
Exactly. So in this case, they should be, they should help the team make a good decision too.
Yep.
Right. So in this, related to this, there's another bit that I also have seen that even in seasoned leaders, which is open and closed decisions. So what does this mean? So sometimes a decision admits variability. That is like you want your team to give you input. Sometimes you want your team to debate approaches or implementations or processes. And if you have space or error, like fault tolerance, you got you should ask a lot of questions as a team leader and ask them and make sure that the team has considered a lot of scenarios and all that. And sometimes your gut is like, I'm not sure about this, but do you have fault tolerance? Yeah. Well, why don't we work out a prototype, a proof of concept, and see how it goes? The best thing that can happen is that you find out something that works that you didn't agree with, and hopefully that changes your mind or opens your horizons. Another thing that can happen is it doesn't work. So then in that case, there's lessons for the team, awesome, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you have decisions that, because it's an urgent scenario or there's no space, need to be taken quickly. So in this case, the team is like, well, I just need to grab a couple of people. We're just going to figure this, how to solve this thing. We're moving. And in that case, that's a closed decision, right? You need to go in. The important thing here is managing expectations of the team and saying, team, this is a closed decision. We're moving quickly. I'm limiting the input.
Yep.
If you have concerns or something, like, let me know, but
raise it.
We already raise it, but we might listen to it, or we will listen to it, but we're just moving on, and then maybe we can we can solve it later. Yep.
So is that when you're encountering a problem and you got to make a decision, in order to achieve balanced decision making, you go down this path? Is the first question, is this an open decision or is this a closed decision? Is that what you should be asking?
Yeah. So does this admit variability or not? Do we need to move very quickly? Can the team help me with this? Well, maybe help me, but I'm already knowing where I'm going and I'm deciding. Sometimes that happens. What you should never do is confuse those.
Yeah.
So I have an example of a previous role in which the team and the leader, the person that was the head of engineering there, they were discussing a type of technology that we're going to adopt. And this person and a very small group of engineers, they figured out during a December period where a lot of people on the team were not around. And they basically made the decision. What was the mistake in this case was that they still brought it to the team almost as the decision was already taken.
We made the decision.
So then when some of the team started asking questions or pushing back, this senior leader starts getting visibly stressed and trying to sway the decision.
Oh, really?
Not accepting that, well, we already take it. I'm sorry, right? Like, yeah. I should have told you. No, but he was still taking it as like, I'm going to listen to your opinion, but I don't really want to because this is the decision. So I think that is a term, because that confuses everybody.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, right.
And this was a season.
Not in an awkward situation.
Yeah, that confuses everybody. Yeah. So if you're straightforward, upfront, keep people, the expectation, the teams are, they're adults, they are professionals, people understand.
Yeah.
One thing that is important to reflect on is that look at your decisions that you've taken, and if a lot of them are closed decisions, then you should ask Why? You know, like, do we don't have any space to fail? Do I trust, maybe I don't trust anyone in my team? Do I have, what are the skills or the knowledge that people need to develop in my team so I can start opening the decisions? Because at this moment, I am the only person that can decide.
Yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, I mean, that sort of self-reflection could probably occur if you're experiencing maybe some sort of problem within the team culture or within your own stress levels, maybe. Like, is that how that would sort of come up?
Yeah. And so I have seen it in some cases where you have we had deadlines and there's no space for opening decisions. So everything is closed. But I think as well, in this case, it's also communicating with the team about we really don't have a lot of space to fail because we have a deadline and we can't just, do anything that will take more time from us and things like that. So, yeah. And I think, so to me, one of my, let's say, principles is having very good integrity and being very honest and transparent with the team and just say what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And recognizing when a situation is not okay, recognizing is the first step towards like, okay, so maybe we can figure out how we can improve this. Sometimes it's not in the control of the team leader, but you can still, cascade or surface it to the leader, et cetera, to understand this is going to cost us in, sustainability. If you don't have space to fail and it just goes on and on and on, like people are going to leave or people are going to be very stressed.
And startups tech companies in general will go through different phases of growth and different areas of pressure, and priorities are going to be completely different at different times, right? So that sort of framework will help definitely in that own internal communication
absolutely,
and add into the sustainability.
And also that I think businesses make decisions about. So I've been in places where suddenly you have a mandate or an imperative of focusing on what saves money and what makes money.
Yeah.
And a lot of those decisions sometimes come as mandates.
Yeah.
Like you only can work on this, or you have to reduce this cost or something. And then, people understand it, maybe at the beginning, but then afterwards they're like, well, when are we going to start, doing cool things?
Doing the cool stuff.
Yeah. When are we going to start learning? Or when am I going to start working on my own, development? I'm not learning anything. I'm just like churning things. So I think that is, but that's a decision, or businesses need to be very intentional, very aware of the cost of this. Like sometimes it's for the survival of the business, so whatever, but it's trade-offs, right? Yeah. Like you might focus on a certain area, but that has certain cost consequence trade-offs. So
what I love about this is what I'm learning is that a lot of companies and a lot of talk on there on LinkedIn about open communication to your staff and delivering purpose and value and why. And I think what this framework does, and I know we're only halfway through it, is it gives you the tools to do that, and it gives you the pathways to go down to communicate that why, as to why it's important to have an open decision on this, and we have the freedom to do so, or why it's important to be, it's more of a closed decision. We basically need to get shit done here because of XYZ, whatever the reason is. Yeah.
So this might not tell you how, like maybe you need to read books, like I love one called Crucial Conversations, to communicate things to the team, but at least like it gives you a skeleton of some bullet points.
All right. Okay.
So the last bit about this decision part is that in many cases, like this is the most common thing, technical decisions, right? You have factions or groups of people that you want to implement in one way, some other people want to implement in another way. Depending on how consequential this is, you can use formal frameworks to help people decide, or to help you decide, because maybe you need to be the decision maker in this. One that I like a lot is called DACI, DACI.
DACI.
So in that case, people put obviously background of maybe what are the product requirements of this, what are you going to work on, some information about other things that relate to the implementation that you want to do, and then you put the options, and then you put the trade-offs of the options. Like sometimes you have like, well, is this like, how big of an effort is implementing this or not? How like, what's the cost that we need to pay for something or not, aside from the engineering effort, etc. What's the risk? All that. And I think that's a very good exercise because it makes things public. Like it basically like opens it up for other people to ask questions, to give feedback, the different factions. Like I have told people in the past that if someone is, they want to use certain technology tool approach, you need to always ask, what's the trade-off for this?
Right.
Because nothing is 100% good or 100% bad.
And the DACI framework allows you to make that.
Allows you to do that.
And it stands for what, design? Is that?
No, it's not. It's called driver, approver, contributors, and inform.
Driver, approver, contributor, and inform.
So in this case, the driver is the person wants the decision to be made. It can be a team leader, or it can be one of the, if you have a technical lead that is in charge of that. The approver might be you as a team leader, or if this has like an impact that might impact more than one team, might be, your boss, a team leader, or their boss, or an architect. The contributors are the people that are going to provide information and feedback about this. And then the informed people might be people adjacent, like maybe the CTO doesn't need to be involved, but they just need to be aware of what's going on.
Fair.
So this is a very good framework. One saying that once a decision is made, you need to communicate you need to do mini change management. You need to be very open, very transparent, communicate the decision in a way that the team understands that it's a decision, it's not going to be reversed. Because sometimes if you're a little bit ambiguous, people might undermine it or might think that it's not done yet, so there's still a chance to change your mind. So you need to communicate in a very clear way. And then, especially when you might have a little bit of emotion in the, in the factions or in the decision, you need to go and talk to the people that didn't get their way in, maybe in a one-on-one, make space for them to talk to you, listen to them. That's a very good, sometimes people only want to be listened to and be heard.
Yeah.
So listen to them, understand their concerns, address their concerns. This gives you opportunity to retransmit the objective and what you're trying to do and why the decision was made. And that is a very helpful thing, because then people, at least on an intellectual level, should understand. Emotional maybe takes a little time to internalize it. Yeah. If there's a space also for that, you can involve them in like in this new implementation, or get them some sort of role so they can get involved in a good way. So then maybe that helps them internalize the decision. So they, that in that way, then, people are okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like sometimes you have to do that disagree and commit that people say, but I think it's good to just, like manage that change with people, right? Not just like, this is it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think I really like that that framework inside this framework, the DACI one that you just said, because I feel like it kind of gives you an overview of who needs to be involved in the communication of the decision. Yeah. You said the driver.
Yeah.
It was driver, informer, driver,
approver, contributor, informer.
Yeah. So if you tick in all those boxes, basically everyone involved in that process or what's been made is communicated to.
Yeah. It's a very good one. I really like it. And it makes things, it takes emotion out of it. Like sure. it puts a lot of, information, and people should be able to answer questions or ask questions or provide feedback.
Yeah. I think if you just space down who each of those people were, or the multiple people in those things, in your mind, you're like, okay, I've covered everyone off. I haven't left anyone off here. Yeah. So.
And it also makes a very good decision record.
Sure.
So in many cases, whenever you have, this obviously doesn't substitute documentation or technical documentation, but you also, whenever I've wondered about certain decisions that have been made, it's been useful to go back and look at those, and I was like, oh, so this is what people were talking about, or this is the reason. It gives you a much better context of like what people were thinking at the time, right? So it's great. I love it.
All right.
So, and then the last bit in this, the next D is delegate, right? So I think this might work better for people that have, direct reports. This might not necessarily be for a 2IC that is just trying to get the team on. It still works, but it works, I think, better for people that have a team leader that wants to become a little more strategic.
Yeah, fantastic. So before we get into delegate, quick recap. So first is delivery, making sure everyone's in alignment with each other, and looking at yourself in terms of like where you're involved in. And essentially we talked about, or you touched a little bit before on blockers, where those blockers are. Yeah. And then when things happen, the decision-making process of what happens and who's involved on those decisions, whether it's the idea is to get to balanced decision-making. And to do that, you got to decide whether it's an open or a closed decision, and then or a technical decision, and use that DACI framework, what we spoke about. So then we move to delegate. Yeah. So why is delegate important?
So again, you need to deliver value in a sustainable way. If you are the person that is doing everything or a lot of things and you don't share, like people won't know what to do if you're not around. People also can end up moving with a single point of view of how to do certain things. So there's also that opportunity cost of people participating and enriching processes, for example. And also in this case, if you're not around, or if you end up doing a lot of things for the team, then if you ever go on a holiday, you won't be, you always be interrupted. Like you can't just move aside for a little bit. And the other thing that we can talk about it with more detail at the end is that as a team leader, if you start delegating things that you do for the daily management of the team or the daily execution of the team, that gives you space to start focusing on more strategic things.
Yeah.
This is inside the team, goes on the daily thing. You want to move yourself a little bit out of that so you can work on the team, which is more strategic parts. And we can talk about it in a second.
That the Cowboy quadrant 2 part, where you want to be.
The important, not urgent things.
That's right. That's where you want to be. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So how do you start delegating, right? And this is, again, I'm going to inject a little bit of commentary here. There's a lot of literature and documentation out there, so people should read it to understand more. This is just a quick guideline. So how do you start? So the first thing is there are responsibilities in teams that should be done by the team, not by the team leader. As an example, people working in agile environments, they have ceremonies and things like that. Ideally, the team has a roster where everyone is participating and sharing the chairing of the meetings, or running demos, or doing certain things. I've seen cases where the team leader is the only person that does it. So in this case, I think it's very easy to just pass that responsibility or rotate it. That's fine.
Yep.
Other thing that could help here is, for example, doing support in many cases. That also should be a roster thing, like that people should be, rotate, taking care of support tickets that come to the team and helping. So obviously, if this is something, if things are very complex, they can pass it and then the rest of the team helps. But there might be support tickets or requests that, the people on the roster can solve or answer. Okay. So that should be, I've seen it one time, a leader of a team. It was not even the team leader. The leader of many team leaders. He left, and then one of the team leaders came to me and he's like, "Can you help us do support?" And I was like, "Excuse me? yeah, because, this person used to take all the support. So now, like, we don't know what, like, we need help. Like, obviously, we need capacity that is lost, but also kind of like, we have no clue what to, and I was like, oh my God. So then I helped them with the rostering. I helped them with, not with the support itself, because also I didn't have the context or even the time to do that. But what I helped them with was like, well, okay, let's figure out what are your priorities in your support tickets. Let's organize things. And then like, so yeah, I support them to help them like to so they could do it themselves.
Yeah.
But that was like, no, you should never put yourself into that position, because then, so like if you leave, then you leave a U-shaped hole in the wall that only you can feel. And it becomes non-sustainable.
Not sustainable. It sounded like that person who was in that role before didn't even have that, what you're talking about before, in the delivery aspect of it.
Yeah.
Of being that blocker.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, well, maybe at that point they thought, so just giving the benefit of the doubt, because I thought the intention was not
there's no intention.
No, I don't think so. But I think like in this case it was like, well, I'm helping them unblock them, because if I take the support from them, they can focus on something else.
I see.
So once you have this, the next thing that I'm going to mention is you should look to seat control, and I took this from a book called Turn the Ship Around. The people need to have clarity.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but apparently it's a great book. You're the second person to mention that.
It's the best. I've read it like, I don't know how many. Oh, really? I've read it many times, but also, sorry, this is just a tangent. I've also even bought the audiobook, because I've read it so many times that I skim it like very quickly, like because I already have it. So I bought the audiobook so I could consume it in a different way, so I can still get something out of it.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's really good. So in this case, the author talks about clarity and control. So if you want to see, clarity and competence. So if you want to give control of a task to someone, the objectives and what needs to happen needs to be very, very clear, but also the person needs to have competence to execute. One thing that is not mentioned as explicit on the book, but it's mentioned in the book, is about impact. So my own modified version of this is clarity, control, and impact. Clarity, competence, and impact.
Okay.
What does this mean? Sometimes, let's talk about those agile ceremonies. Sure. People know if someone is rotated and they're gonna run a retro, do they know what have they run retros? Have they been participating? Yeah, they're competent in running it. Fine. The clarity, do they know what the retro is for? Yeah. What if they want to change the retro from what we did well, what we could have done better, to start, stop, keep?
Okay.
What's the impact of that? It's not really a big deal. Like, it's fine. So you're like, cool.
Yeah,
just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
The more impact the task have, I think this is where you need to be more involved, or set expectations about your involvement. So David Marquet in the book says, if people in the kitchen, they have they want to prepare the menu, it's like, I don't need to be involved in there. They are the best people to understand the nutritional requirements, the supplies that we have. Maybe they have to go and liaise with someone else to understand when are we going to be on port to get more supplies and all that. It's like, they should do it on their own.
So is David the captain?
David is the captain.
Sorry.
They're in the kitchen. No, that's fine.
Yeah, we do it. Yeah.
However, there's the things about, well, if there are people planning the routes of the submarine, well, I need to be informed, because if suddenly someone wants to go into certain area and they don't have context, what if we could cause an international incident?
100%.
So I need to be informed, not completely, on top of it, but I need to be informed.
Yeah, I trust them to make the decisions.
But I need to go and ask questions.
Sure.
And then maybe the next level is, if we need to launch a missile or a torpedo, only I can do that.
Yeah.
Because the impact of that is very serious, right? Loss of life or damage. So only I can do that. That cannot be a delegated task.
Yeah.
Right? Going back to our
DACI?
No. Going back to our scenario where the stakes are much lower than firing a torpedo. There are certain things. Yeah, there are certain things, for example, that you can delegate. So in this case, you need to be sure that the objective of the task is very clear. Sometimes tasks, similar to decisions, they have variability or not. In for example, if you're preparing to release a change.
I was going to say new feature development.
Yeah, new feature development.
Yeah.
Sometimes like the release process is very straightforward. Doesn't really, and I'm talking about things have been deployed and you're going to turn a feature flag. The process in many companies is very straightforward. It has like, well, have you checked these things? Like the dependencies, are they done? Have they done this? So you basically follow a script. So in that case, you're responsible for it, and you can take certain, but it's the task is quite straightforward.
It's kind of like the process of the shit.
Yeah,
I need to be informed on that, but I don't. Someone else can.
Yeah. So in that case, like that's a closed task in a way. Some tasks are more open, right? If you're gonna become what they call an objective lead, an OKR lead, that you're gonna own an objective of the team. That might be more variability on like how do you decide certain things.
Yeah.
But that has a bigger impact, right? Yes. So that has a bigger impact. So in that case, you need to set expectations to tell the person, I'm gonna be more involved in this one than if you were just running a retro. Why? Going back to the decision part, you need to be comfortable with how the outcome of this task is, how this OKR ends up being decided, implemented, released. So in order not to feel like you're micromanaging or the people feel, you can understand the impact of the task and tell the person, look, these are my expectations. This is what I need to be involved. Like I might be checking with you very early in the process. So we agree, we align.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with what you're doing. It's fine, like I will ask you questions and, not tell you what to do, but I just need to be very aware because this has a bigger impact.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, I think like setting those expectations is great. I've seen cases in which, as well, similar to a decision, people delegate and say, delegator is just passing things to another person. Yeah, sure. And then a team leader has delegated an OKR to someone and they don't check close enough or frequently enough, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, they see that they're like, no, I don't agree with this. I don't align. I'm not comfortable. Let's just do something else. And then the team feels that's a waste of time.
Oops.
Like they develop resentment. So in this case, like if you're straightforward, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be checking. We need to agree, align, all that. Why? Because the impact is big.
Yep.
So we cannot mess it up.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Cool. And that's basically what you should be aiming for in this delegation bit. Yeah. One of the things, and now I'm going to move. So this is the how, right? Your objective should be very clear. You need to understand that the person doing the task is, has the right skills to do it. Otherwise, you can increase your level of support, because sometimes you want the person to still do it, but they don't know. Let's increase my level of involvement in terms of support so the person feels they can do the task. And then depending on the impact, you express or you set expectations about, I'm going to be involved more or less, because we need to align. Okay. So why do you want to do this? Again, with the why, because in this case, your role as a team leader, you need to understand what is the value that you provide to the team. In many cases, a lot of people when you work in things in the team, that is the daily grind, how you execute that the team advances, a lot of people can do what you're doing already.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
We're talking about decision making, we're talking about delegation, so if you start moving some of these tasks to these people, it's going to give you some space so you can move on the team that is in the more strategic bit. So I'm going to give you an example of in the team, on the team.
Sure.
So this is a little bit clearer. So imagine that I need to start, I'm going to recruit someone in my team, whether it's because someone left or because I'm going to grow my team. The on the team task would be, I'm going to talk to the product manager, I'm going to talk to my manager to understand like what does the team need as the type of skill, seniority, profile, etc. Why? Because I'm understanding the current needs of the team as a whole, but I'm also like looking at the future and what we're going to do and the future needs of the team, how we're going to go, what's our next step. It's a little bit on the future. That's an on the team task. The in the team task would be doing the interviews or the recruitment process itself. So in that case, you can train people, you can get them involved in interviews and say, can you help me? Why I need your support to help me interview this person in this area, and then you train them and all that. That's the inside, the in part, right? And maybe at the end, you're also going to be participating in that because you're going to be the manager of this person, so you cannot really completely detach yourself from it. But that's the difference, right? Like the in part is like very execution kind of thing. The on part is more strategy.
Yeah.
So you want to focus more on those on parts because you as a team leader, those are the parts that will have more impact.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Aligning the team. That's an on the team task. Understanding the objectives, aligning them. That's an unblocking them. That's an in part. Can be an on part, can be any part. It depends how you see it.
Yeah, sure.
Because it could be like very tactical. Training your team, getting your people to develop. That's an on part because you're looking also at the future, at how you do this sustainably. How does the team go in the long run? Okay. So that's the part that is the important part about the.
That's working on the team.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you as a team leader, and as I mentioned to you before we record, I didn't understand. I didn't know about this, or I don't think it landed, or I didn't internalize it until much later in my career after I stopped being a team leader.
Yeah.
I was caught in the team parts, and I was not really giving myself space. And I guess like expectations and all that were different.
Yeah. So that example that you gave before of that other manager or leader who was team leader who was doing the support tickets, they're working in the team there.
Yeah.
They're doing that.
Precisely.
On the team. And then when you come in and, teach the team how to do it themselves or set up the processes, well, they could have all done it themselves, but set up the process to enable them to do it themselves. That process of doing that is working on the team. So it's kind of like that whole analogy of, give a person a fish they eat for a day, teach them how to fish, they'll
a little bit. I think that is, anyway, but I think like the part here too is there are different types of on the team process. Sure. Also varies depending on the type of company you're working on and the stage and all that. But it's giving you space, to for people to do that, and then that supports the team because it helps them grow. It connects them to like different kinds of it helps them with different skills. It gives you space to grow yourself because you also might need to grow. Like if your company is growing, you need to be growing with your role. So if you're only in the team, whenever something like there's an opportunity to move to the next role, you might not have that different, that kind of like expertise, that skill, that experience of like more strategic bit.
Yeah. So a good question to ask yourself when you're in a team leader role is what I'm doing. Am I working on the team or in the team? Yeah. And essentially you want to be spending the majority of your time on the team.
Yeah. Or a good chunk of your time on the team. And one thing, this is a very good segue that you're giving me. There are exercises like a basic succession planning exercise that also this is a common thing. Yeah. When you write what you're doing, like write your tasks, and do this every quarter or something. Write what you currently do, and then understand one, like is this a strategic, is it on or in? But also start looking at what are the kinds of things that I can delegate to people and can also benefit them. Yeah. And start planning for that. And then there might be parts that you're like, well, why cannot, this is a very execution type of task, and I cannot delegate it. Why?
Yeah.
You know, that again, the reflection part about what do my people need to grow and to be capable, to have that competence to take over this task. Yes. And then you can also work on that.
Yep.
And sometimes, you know, it doesn't take, if you go on holidays and you like, well, I want people should do what I'm doing, you know, might not be a single person taking over you, might be the whole team, but like that's a way of like that you can start spreading, and it's a great thing for people to learn. Okay. And I think so it's not people management per se, like this is very operational.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it helps.
Yeah. All right.
It touches the development of the team and the growth and all that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm just conscious of time.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Maybe you can cut it into 2 parts.
Yeah, maybe. Is there anything else at the end of that to wrap that up? Because I think that's
So one of the things that this is a funny thing, especially in the situation that I'm in. But one of the things that I tell the team leaders constantly is that you need to work on growing the people that you're working with, delegating, and eventually making yourself redundant.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because you want to be redundant, but I think it's a way of understanding that if you're not around, things are going to fall apart. You know, the team is resilient. You're developing resiliency in the team. You're developing capability in the team that if you, for whatever reason, again, you want to go on holidays, things are not going to crumble.
They're not going to fall apart. Yeah.
So it's a way of sustainability.
Yeah. So the idea of your role, essentially, in a good, healthy way, is to make yourself redundant in that role of working. I essentially probably like in the team, because I think the business will probably need you working on the team in a variety of different ways. And the end goal would be that all the tasks and all the on the team jobs are completed. But I figure like as a company grows and progresses, there's always going to be something else.
And eventually you can start training people. Like, you know, once people start growing in your team, you can also like start delegating those, involving people in those decisions and all that. And you can start moving towards the next position.
Exactly. I was going to say, like, by making yourself redundant in that role, you've done the good job to move into that next role and role, and then someone will follow in your footsteps, sort of thing. So that's the idea of it. Yeah. I think it's an excellent framework for someone to come in if they're a bit daunted and stepping up into a team lead role for the first time or something like that. And it's not, you know, it's broken down. It's pretty simple and easy to understand. And I think particularly that part around delegating and also around the decision-making process, that DACI framework gives a lot of confidence, because I think the last thing of, you know, when I've made decisions in the past and when I've spoken to people who've made decisions in the past, that when it's failed or they've had a bad experience is because they forgot to inform some person along the way, and they've been pissed off about it or left down. It's been left a foul taste in their mouth or something like that. But if you've gone through that process, it ticks it all off, and you've got it there documented. And if something ever happened, it's like, well, no, we told you it was there. You can always fall back on it. So
look, there's no silver bullet, because you can have a DACI framework that no one reads.
Fair enough.
You know, but you know,
then you've got a communication problem, right, or an influence problem.
But I think like it's a solid one. So it should work for many people.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. Is there anything else you wanted to mention in that?
No, I think that's kind of it.
We need a name, mate. What's going on? We need a name for this. We need a name for this framework.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, DDD is taken already for domain-driven design. So we might have to figure out another thing. So I put it on, like, the name of my talk was Managing the Daily Grind, but I think like this goes a little bit outside of that.
Managing the daily grind,
because this helps you manage the daily grind, but then the after, you know, like the epilogue of this is like, so you can start also like focusing on not the daily grind. So it ends up being a little bit of
free yourself from the daily grind.
Yeah, free yourself.
Yeah.
We need to figure out a catchy name.
Until then, Ben, thanks so much for coming.
That's great.
I think it was great. It was a great framework. And I think I've learned a lot in terms of how to implement. Now I just need a team. We're hiring people here, guys, so come help us a lot. This framework will help a lot with not just tech, I think, with anyone managing.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I'm glad it's useful. This is my purpose in life, to the smallest thing, to the higher impact. I want to be useful for people. So whenever I'm helpful, this ticks like, in my daily mission of being helpful to people. So
good. Before you go, we've got a couple of questions that I tend to ask everyone, sorry. We mentioned books. I'm glad you're a reader. I'm an avid reader too. What's your favorite book from a leadership perspective?
So
Turn the ship around.
Turn the Ship Around might be one of the best ones.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very comprehensive and it definitely hits all the, I don't know, I think like, I align my principles to this book. I think I read it before I was a team leader. I read it when I was a senior developer, and it has shaped a lot of the way I want to work with people.
Yeah.
So I think that might be my best one, or for leadership, that might be the one that I like the most. One that I think it's very useful for people to follow, especially if they're, starting to managing people, is strangely enough a book called Managing Humans.
Managing Humans.
Yeah.
I haven't read it.
And this book is one of those books that had been written almost like they took a blog, and then they made chapters out of it.
All right.
So it's very easy to read. The good thing is, like, if you read it I love reading with others. I love book clubs. Oh, yeah. If you use it in a book club, people can come in and out because not all that, there's no sequential chapters or things like that. And this is a very good, the author is called Michael Lopp, but he calls himself Rands for some reason. And the core of this is like talks a lot about managing engineers who have, we have very specific subculture in a way. Yeah. So that is also one of my favorite ones too. And I've read this with people that have just started in their leadership journey.
Managing Humans, that one. Yeah. Cool.
And I also, similar to Turn the Ship Around, I have old versions, new versions, audio versions, things like that.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Who would be the most influential person in your career and why?
I think this is very hard. Look, I think one of the person. So I have two people.
Okay.
I'm gonna name names, but I shouldn't name names. But I think like so one person that was my manager and was the one that pushed me to be a team leader. His name is Wayne Turner. Hey Wayne. And he not only believed in me, but he gave me, he was a very wise man, and he changed the way I saw a lot of things. For example, he was the one that taught me how to interview people. And I remember part of his principles at the beginning, I was like, I don't know what to do. We should do another podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. And he was like, very simple.
Yeah.
If a person, I don't know what to ask them. He's like, if a person talks about something in an interview or puts it on their CV, fair game. Go and ask them. Because sometimes you would go and ask people questions that you didn't know if they knew.
Yep.
And if you do that, then an interview can become very awkward because people, I don't know how to answer this, or I don't know this, and then people get nervous. And so that's not conducive to a good outcome. So nuggets of wisdom like this were like amazing. Like it was like, whoa. So I think for him, I owe that part. And he pushed me to be a team leader.
I think I appreciate it. I love that. It's only putting in a CV what you'd be comfortable getting asked about in an interview. Yeah.
And then my other person and this was early in my career, Owen Senior, who I don't know if you know.
I've heard of him.
He used to be the chief product and technology officer at JobAdder. He used to be the CTO of Ansarada.
Yeah.
He was also the person that pushed me to be, with my imposter syndrome, I don't push myself to be many things. Development manager and VP of engineering. And he was the one that saw the strength of me leading people, which is, I think now, like the strength that I see the strongest I am is in that context.
Yeah, fantastic.
So he recognized that, and he taught me a lot, and he believed in me a lot. So this is that I think he, not only because they influenced me in a very tangible way by pushing me or promoting me to be different roles, but I think what I learned from these two people, obviously I learned from a lot of people, and I don't, it's a little bit of a disservice not mentioning a million.
Yeah, sure.
But I think when just top of my head, these would be the two people
Fantastic.
that I really...
A lot of the reasons behind that as well was like challenging that imposter syndrome to get to the leadership, and then also like how to interview people and the influence around that.
Yeah.
The tools that allowed you to get to there and do your job well. So it was really great. Last question. It's a bit of a funny one, funky one. What habits do you contribute to your success?
Okay. So I think this is easy.
Yeah.
Well, in a way,
Maybe 3.
Well, so I think one of the things that I do is like I reflect a lot. Like so I don't know if this is a habit, but this is just a work that has worked in me. I worked a lot from a long time since I was a very young person in managing my ego.
Oh yeah.
So what do I do with this? I reflect. I am very mindful. I am trying to be as aware as I can. You know, like I've gone to therapy too, but that's not a habit.
Yeah.
So that I think like that has, provided a path for me to success, because when I'm leading people and when I'm connecting with people understand that I am, like I'm truthful, have integrity. It helps me keep calm under certain situations where people might kind of like get a little bit stressed, and I'm like, it's cool. Makes allows me to be funny. To try to be funny, or to take situations not very like not that serious.
Yeah.
So I think like that has been so the habits that bring me to this is like, I try to practice mindfulness meditation.
Okay. So practicing mindfulness is that habit, or is it the self-reflection habit?
Well, it's a habit, but also like I do a lot of self-reflection aside from that.
Yeah.
I don't do journaling, although people have recommended to me.
Yeah.
But I do, sometimes I write things down, but no, it's not a consistent.
Sure. Come a bit like that.
What other... No, so that was maybe not that easy. I thought about it.
You said that was an easy one. Yeah.
I think a habit is reading. I don't know if you can call a habit reading. So I'm always reading.
100% it's a habit.
I read every day. I read like many books, in parallel, not at the same time.
You do that, you'll read, like you'll pick a few books up and read. Yeah.
So I do the following. In order not to because I've gotten confused in one point in my life when I was reading a book called Conflicted and a book called Think Again. And I mixed those, like some of those. So
I can see how you might have mixed those two books up though, just from the titles of them.
So, but what I normally do is I read a technical book. I read like a non-fiction book.
Yeah.
And I read a fiction book.
Yeah.
So the fiction book is mostly for disconnecting and that. The non-fiction book, it helps me because I like, science and all that. And it also allows me to always provide interesting things to a conversation.
Yeah.
It allows me to be, work better in public. And a technical book, sometimes it's technical, like, microservices or, event-driven architectures. Or sometimes I do like a type of leadership. Like, so that is in between, like, because the technical things are mostly, I like reading them, but a lot of them are work-oriented. Like, I do this for work. And then there's like the book that is like businessy and leadership. Those I like them. Those are work adjacent. Yeah. So I like to read them. They were going to help me at work, definitely. Yeah. But they also, they enrich my life. So yeah, reading. I think reading might be also one from the feedback that I gotten from a lot of people. I think is like whenever I bring them recommendations or books or facts or things, they do say that. So I think that.
So reading, self-reflection,
mindfulness.
One more. Oh, mindfulness.
No, self-reflection and mindfulness, I would put them on the same.
Yeah, sure.
What other habit do I have? I don't have a lot of habits aside from reading. I think a habit might also be I take copious notes for everything.
It's a good one.
I write down everything. Yeah. And one of these things that is very useful this is a little bit of a hack, but it helps with establishing relationships of trust in a very quick way. I am open about it because I'm not manipulating people, but so as a copyist taker of notes, if I have a one-on-one with you, we're talking about things, and then I write down, like what we're talking about. If you suddenly tell me, oh, I'm interested in DACI, I'd really, really like what you said about DACI. So imagine that I take a note, and then I go, and after that, either based on my note, I go and say, guess what, Sam? You told me about you were interested in DACIs. Here's a DACI framework. There's some links. Or if I bump into something that I remember that it's you, I go and send you something. Doesn't have to. It could be right away, or it could be later on. What does that make? Like, people, they know that you were listening to them. They know that you care because you managed to write it down and to make the effort to provide something to the person. So that eventually gets, or the other thing could be like, this is very common. Oh, I'll help you with this. Oh, I'm interested in this. Oh, let me just go and check, and if I can, talk to someone. And then people, like, if you don't take notes, something like, you're so busy that. So like coming back to, guess what? You wanted to check about your permanent residence, and I went and, like I talked to the person, and, here's the email, and people are like, there's this follow-up.
Yeah.
They say, they follow up on what they said they were going to do. So like for me, it's like a hack.
Yeah.
It doesn't replace, like true trust or knowledge, but I think it establishes a pattern or at least an expectation that if I told you that I'm gonna follow up in this, I will do it. So like showing the first sign, like people are like, okay, I can trust in this person. So it's not manipulation because people that know me know that I do this, but I think it's a good habit to have.
Yeah.
So taking notes,
love it
all the time. Yeah.
Love it. All right, Ben, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I hope everyone who's listening and watching has too. And thank you so much again.
Thank you. If you stayed until this point, thank you.